There are moments in history when bridges built over decades collapse in a single day. One man, one decision, one act of pride, of arrogance, of blindness can shatter the delicate bond between nations. Between America and India, two great civilizations with dreams of progress and hope, there was once trust, dialogue, and partnership. But all it takes is one hand to set fire to the rope that ties two ships together. People imagine that history is written by crowds, by governments, by powers. No. Often it is written by the trembling hand of a single individual who chooses selfishness over vision. And when that hand moves, the consequences echo not only in corridors of power, but in the lives of millions who never had a voice in the choice. America and India, two lands rich with stories, with sacrifice, with the blood and sweat of ordinary people, stood like pillars facing one another across the ocean. One with its ideals of liberty, innovation, strength, the other with its wisdom, resilience, and deep spiritual soil. Together they could rise higher than apart. Together they could heal divisions, share resources, build a better tomorrow. But when betrayal enters, when ego takes the throne, the foundation begins to crack. And so one Indian, just one, through words, through action, through careless defiance, poisoned the well of trust. What takes decades to build was lost in a storm of hours. This is not simply politics, this is human nature in its rawest form. For when selfish ambition blinds the eyes, nations become pawns, relationships become tools, and the hearts of millions are traded for a seat at the table of power. Think of it. Farmers in the villages of India who only desire rain for their crops, not conflict. Workers in the factories of America who dream not of division but of opportunity. Students in both nations lifting their eyes to the future, longing for connection, not separation. They are the ones who suffer when a single voice chooses destruction over unity. The power of one, do you feel it? One life can bless the world or curse it. One life can open doors or slam them shut. One life can build bridges or burn them until the ashes choke the air. And in this story, it was not the multitude, not the millions, but one who chose the fire. And yet, hidden beneath the ruins, there is a lesson carved in stone. It is this: never underestimate the weight of your choices. You may think your action is small, your decision is private, your words are forgotten in the wind, but they ripple, they spread, they carry into chambers you may never see. They can heal or they can destroy. They can reconcile or they can break apart even the strongest bonds. Some will say, it is too late, the relationship is gone, the trust is shattered forever. But I tell you, the future does not belong to the cynics. The future belongs to those who dare to rebuild even when the ruins still smoke. The future belongs to those who understand that one destructive voice must never silence the billions who long for peace. Look deeper. Behind the smoke and the broken ties, there is still a hunger for justice, for friendship, for destiny greater than division. If one person can destroy, then another can restore. If one can tear down, then another can rise with the courage to build again. And so the question thunders in the silence of this moment: who will be that one? Do you want me to make this even more intense and fiery, with sharper imagery and emotional punch, or keep it more in the calm, prophetic rhythm like this draft? One person's selfish decision can unravel decades of trust between nations. The collapse of US-India relations is a reminder that history is often shaped by the actions of individuals, not crowds. Ordinary people, farmers, workers, students, carry the cost of broken alliances they never chose. The power of one life is immense. It can bless the world or burn bridges that millions depend on. Every choice, no matter how private, sends ripples that reach far beyond what we see. If one individual can destroy, another can rise with courage to rebuild and restore what was lost. One person's selfish decision can unravel decades of trust between nations. That is not just a political statement, it is a truth that should shake us to our core. For we often imagine the fate of nations being shaped by armies, by massive governments, by the grinding weight of history. Yet time and again the pattern is revealed. It is not the multitude but the single figure who tips the balance, a whisper in the wrong ear, a signature on a paper, a word spoken without wisdom, and suddenly the rope that held two great nations together begins to fray. Think about the bridge between America and India. Two vast civilizations, each with their own rhythm, their own dreams, their own wounds. It was not an easy bridge to build. It was forged through years of diplomacy, through late nights in conference rooms, through compromises that demanded humility on both sides. It was built not just by leaders but by people, the students who crossed oceans for education, the doctors and engineers who shared knowledge, the businesses that tied their futures together. Every handshake, every trade agreement, every cultural exchange was a stone laid in that bridge. And then, in one reckless moment, one act of betrayal or arrogance, the bridge trembles, cracks, and collapses into the waters below. This is the weight of selfishness. It does not simply affect the one who chooses it, it spills outward like ink in clear water, a single stain that spreads until the entire pool is clouded. That is what happens when one individual allows ego to rise higher than wisdom, ambition to overrule compassion. The damage is never contained. It moves through governments, through economies, through the hearts of ordinary people who wanted nothing but peace. And what is most tragic is this: the millions who suffer are never the ones who cause the fracture. The farmer in a quiet Indian village who only wants rain for his crops, the single mother in America working 2 jobs, dreaming of stability for her children, the young student with stars in her eyes, hoping to build a future with the knowledge she gains abroad. These are the ones who pay the price when relations collapse. Their hopes are entangled in forces they cannot control. Their lives are bent by the choices of one who never thought of them at all. Can you feel the injustice of it? That the smallness of one heart could bring suffering to so many others? That a decision made in the shadow of pride could echo in the lives of generations yet unborn? And yet this is how the world works. The world is fragile. Trust is fragile. It takes patience, humility, and decades of labor to build it, and only one careless spark to burn it to the ground. But here lies the deeper message. If one person can destroy, then each of us carries the same potential to protect. If one voice can poison trust, then another voice can heal it. If one choice can bring down nations, then another choice can lift them toward hope. This is not just about politics. This is about you, about me, about the truth that our actions ripple outward in ways we cannot imagine. Your choices are never small. Your words are never just words. They carry weight. They carry destiny. They carry the power to either tear down or to build. So when you hear that one person's selfish decision can unravel decades of trust between nations, do not only see the tragedy, see the mirror it holds before your own life. Because it is telling you that what you choose, how you live, how you speak, can tip the balance not only in your family, not only in your community, but far beyond what your eyes can see. The collapse of U.S.-India relations is a reminder that history is often shaped by the actions of individuals, not crowds. We look at the sweep of nations and imagine it as armies, governments, or great masses of people who determine the path of history. We see the flags waving, the speeches echoing in vast halls, the parades and protests filling streets. But behind all of it, there is almost always one moment, one decision, one person who shifts the weight of the future. It is tempting to believe that change belongs only to the many, that a single life is too small to carry such power, but history whispers differently. A single choice has lit wars and ended them. One word spoken at the right or wrong time has lifted nations or cast them into despair. Think of it as solitary hand signs an agreement and peace is born. Another hand, in pride or anger, tears up the paper and the peace is gone. The crowd may cheer or weep, but it is the individual who pulls the trigger, who raises the pen, who speaks the word that sets the crowd in motion. So it was when the fragile bond between America and India trembled. Years of dialogue, partnership, and cautious trust rested on a knife's edge, balanced carefully by countless acts of cooperation. And then one act, one man's decision sent it tumbling. Not the voice of millions, but a one, echoing into silence and leaving 2 nations staring at each other across a widening gulf. Look deeper into this truth. The destiny of nations often hinges not on the roar of the multitude, but on the whisper of a single soul. Crowds can only move in the direction given to them. They follow, they respond, they carry the weight. But the spark, the ignition that comes from one. The crowd did not decide to betray, one person did. The crowd did not choose to sever trust, one person acted, and the multitude bore the consequences. And this is not only a political lesson, it is a mirror held up to every life. How often do we excuse ourselves thinking, I am only one. My choices are too small to matter. But if one can destroy relations between great nations, then one can also build them. If one can spark division, then one can also create unity. If one can cast shadows, then one can also light a torch for others to follow. Consider the people whose names you may never know, yet whose decisions still ripple through your life today. The teacher who chose to believe in a struggling child, the doctor who discovered a treatment against all odds, the activist who refused to be silent when silence was safe, the neighbor who chose kindness when bitterness was easier. They did not wait for the crowd. They did not look to millions for permission. They acted, and the crowd followed the path they created. That is the power hidden within one life. A power so immense that it can shape relationships between nations or shape the destiny of a single heart sitting in the shadows, waiting for a word of hope. To dismiss it is to deny the very evidence of history. To embrace it is to awaken to the truth that you, yes you, hold in your hands a measure of that same influence. And so the collapse of trust between 2 great nations is not only a tragedy to mourn, but a lesson to remember. It tells us that the future is not sealed by the roar of many, but by the choice of one. And if one can tear it apart, then one can also lift it higher than it has ever been. Ordinary people, farmers, workers, students, carry the cost of broken alliances they never chose. This is the cruel weight of history, that those who sow peace often reap the harvest of conflict planted by others. Leaders sit in gilded rooms, their words shaping treaties and tearing them apart. But when the ties between nations snap, it is not the powerful who first feel the sting. It is the ones who live far from palaces and parliaments, those who wake up before dawn to labor for survival, those who dream quietly of a better life for their children. Imagine the farmer in a sun-scorched Indian village, his hands cracked from years of working the soil. He does not debate foreign policy. He debates only with the sky, pleading for rain. Yet when relations collapse, it is his world that shakes. Prices rise, exports fall. Promises of trade and support vanish like morning mist. His crops remain the same, his toil unchanging, but the weight pressing on his shoulders grows heavier because somewhere, far away, trust was broken. Picture the worker in an American factory, muscles aching from endless shifts, saving every dollar to put food on the table. He has no seat at the table of nations. He never cast a vote on alliances or treaties. But when partnerships shatter, it is his factory that slows, his hours that are cut, his paycheck that dwindles. The fracture that began with the decision of one ripples into his home, his children's future, his ability to hold on to dignity in a world he cannot control. And what of the student, bright-eyed, full of possibility, carrying books heavier than her small shoulders should bear? She crosses oceans in search of knowledge, believing that education is the bridge between worlds. She imagines a future where ideas flow freely, where friendships stretch across borders, where dreams are larger than geography. But when ties between nations collapse, visas close, opportunities shrink, and the path she once walked so boldly becomes narrow, uncertain, clouded by barriers she never built. This is the hidden tragedy of broken alliances. Those who never sought division are the ones who feel it most. They are not the architects of mistrust, but they live among the ruins. They are not the voices of pride and arrogance, but they are silenced by its consequences. History cruelly does not ask them for permission. It simply delivers the weight of decisions made in their name. Yet in this weight lies a powerful truth. The endurance of ordinary people has always been greater than the recklessness of leaders. When farmers still plant, when workers still labor, when students still dream, they declare silently that no betrayal can erase their hope. They carry on, not because the world is fair, but because they refuse to let despair write the final word of their story. Their resilience is a quiet protest, a defiance stronger than anger, a light that flickers but never dies. And perhaps it is here, in the perseverance of the ordinary, that redemption waits. For if nations are broken by selfishness at the top, they may yet be rebuilt by the faith, courage, and persistence at the bottom. The hands that till the soil, the hands that build the machines, the hands that hold the books, these hands, though unseen, may one day lift the fallen weight of history and carry it toward a future that leaders alone could not imagine. The power of one life is immense. It can bless the world or burn bridges that millions depend on. This is the mystery and the weight of human existence, that within the fragile frame of a single person rests the ability to shape destinies far beyond their own. A life is not small even when it feels hidden. A voice is not powerless even when it whispers. A choice is never without consequence even when it seems insignificant. History has always been the stage where one person steps forward and changes everything. One scientist who refused to surrender to failure discovers a cure that saves generations. One leader who dares to sign a fragile peace creates decades of stability. One teacher who believes in a forgotten child ignites a flame that grows into greatness. Yet the same truth carries a shadow. One ruler drunk with pride plunges his nation into war. One act of betrayal poisons trust between countries that took decades to build. One careless tongue releases words that cannot be gathered back, and the result is division, pain, and regret. The same force that can heal can also destroy. Picture a torch. In the right hand, it lights a path through the darkness, guiding countless others safely forward. In the wrong hand, it sets fire to homes, villages, entire nations. The torch itself does not change. It is the heart of the one who carries it that determines whether it becomes light or destruction. And so it is with every human life. Each of us carries a torch. Each of us has the power to illuminate or to burn. We often underestimate this truth because we measure influence by titles, wealth, or fame. But the power of one is not reserved for those who stand on grand stages. It belongs to every person who breathes. Think of the quiet grandmother who teaches her family forgiveness instead of bitterness. Her influence may never be written in history books, yet it reshapes the lives of children, grandchildren, and generations yet to come. Think of the factory worker who chooses honesty when cheating would be easier. His integrity inspires those around him, and though he may never know it, he strengthens the moral backbone of an entire community. And in the same way, one person's fall into selfishness, arrogance, or pride can undo what countless others have labored to build. One man can fracture a bond between nations. One word can pierce the heart of a loved one. One action can close doors that may never open again. This is not meant to paralyze us with fear, but to awaken us to the sacred weight of every choice we carry. Your life matters because it does not stand alone. It is connected like threads in a vast tapestry. Pull one thread and the pattern shifts. Cut one and the design unravels. Every decision you make, every word you speak, every action you take becomes part of a story far larger than your own. And though you may never see the full picture, you can be certain that your thread is not meaningless. The power of one life is a warning, but it is also an invitation. A warning that destruction is easier than creation, that it is simpler to burn a bridge than to build one. But an invitation to live with such intention, such courage, such love, that your life becomes a blessing rippling outward into places you may never touch with your hands. For just as one can tear down, one can lift up. Just as one can divide, one can unite. Just as one can curse, one can bless. And the question that lingers is not whether one life has power, it always does. The question is what power your life will choose to release. Every choice, no matter how private, sends ripples that reach far beyond what we see. We like to believe that our actions are contained, that what we do behind closed doors stays hidden, that a word spoken in anger fades in the air, that a decision made in solitude affects no one but ourselves. But life does not work that way. Life is like a vast ocean, and each choice is a stone cast into its waters. The ripples spread outward, touching shores we may never walk, shaping futures we may never witness. Consider the power of a single word. A parent, weary after a long day, chooses patience instead of anger when their child makes a mistake. That small act of restraint plants a seed of security in the child's heart, shaping the way they will carry themselves into the world. The parent may never see how that moment changes the child's confidence, their relationships, even their destiny, but the ripple has already gone out. Now imagine the opposite. A word of cruelty spoken carelessly in that same moment can lodge like a thorn, wounding a spirit for years. That too is a ripple. That too carries beyond the moment. Think also of the quiet decisions made in secret. A leader accepts a bribe, believing no one will ever know. But that choice, though hidden at first, alters policies, damages trust, and sets in motion consequences that reach countless lives. Or a leader chooses integrity, refusing to compromise for selfish gain. That unseen moment strengthens the foundation of trust, inspires others to walk in truth, and builds a legacy that outlives the leader themselves. The action is private, but the impact is anything but. Even the smallest decisions hold weight. A student chooses discipline over distraction, and that habit becomes the bedrock of excellence, influencing careers, families, and communities. A worker chooses honesty in a moment of temptation, and though no one applauds, that honesty preserves not just their own character, but the integrity of an entire system. A stranger offers kindness to another who is drowning in despair, and that kindness becomes the thread that keeps a soul from unraveling. This is why we must never underestimate the sacredness of each choice. We may not see the full consequence, but we must live as though every decision matters, because it does. The future is built not in the grand moments, but in the hidden ones. The world does not turn only on great speeches or dramatic acts, but on the quiet daily choices of ordinary people who will never make headlines. When you choose love over bitterness, you are sending a ripple into a world desperate for compassion. When you choose courage over fear, you are sending a ripple that inspires someone else to rise. When you choose truth over convenience, you are sending a ripple that strengthens the invisible fabric of trust holding communities together. These ripples may seem small, but over time, they collide, they merge, they become waves that shift the tides of history. So never say to yourself, this does not matter. I am only one person. My choices are too small, for nothing is small when it comes to shaping destiny. You do not live in isolation. You are part of a vast web of lives, and every step you take shakes the ground beneath more feet than your own. And though you may never know who was touched by the ripple you created, you can be certain that someone, somewhere felt its impact and was changed by it. If one individual can destroy, another can rise with courage to rebuild and restore what was lost. This is the balance of human history. For every hand that tears down, there is another that dares to lift up. Destruction may be sudden, dramatic, loud, but restoration is quieter, harder, slower, and infinitely more courageous. Anyone can set fire to a house in seconds, but it takes a builder's steady patience to lay each brick, to lift each beam, to create again what was reduced to ashes. We have seen this truth written into the very fabric of our world. After wars that shattered cities into rubble, there were men and women who picked up stones with their bare hands and began to rebuild. Where hatred poisoned communities, voices of reconciliation rose, daring to forgive when vengeance seemed easier. Where betrayal severed bonds, someone chose to trust again, not because it was safe, but because it was necessary for the future. Every chapter of devastation in history is followed by a chapter written by those who refuse to let devastation have the final word. Think of the bridges that collapsed between nations. One person's arrogance, one act of betrayal, one decision fueled by selfishness may have torn them apart. But imagine another stepping forward, someone with vision larger than pride, someone who chooses humility over ego, someone who says, I will not let this story end here. That individual becomes the architect of hope, the one who proves that ruins are not the end, but the beginning of renewal. This is not easy. Rebuilding is never easy. It demands more strength than destruction, more patience than anger, more faith than despair. The one who destroys feels powerful in the moment, but the one who rebuilds must walk day after day carrying burdens no one else applauds. They must stand against cynics who say, "It cannot be done." They must keep going when progress is slow, when trust is fragile, when every step feels heavier than the last. And yet, their courage plants the seeds of a future that generations will one day harvest. Even in our personal lives, we see this truth. A relationship may be broken by betrayal, but it can be restored by the courage to forgive and rebuild trust, one small act at a time. A community may be divided by misunderstanding, but it can be healed by one voice willing to listen, to reconcile, to bridge the gap. A family may be scared by years of silence, but it can be renewed by a single act of love that breaks the chain of bitterness. The courage of one can heal what the actions of another once shattered. And this is why hope must never die, even when trust is broken, even when nations fall into conflict, even when relationships collapse into silence. For as long as one person remains willing to rebuild, there is always a path back to wholeness. The same force that destroys can be countered by the force that creates. The same hand that wounds can be matched by the hand that heals. The same voice that divides can be answered by a voice that unites. So when you look at the ruins, whether in the world around you or in your own life, do not only see the ashes of what was lost, look closer, listen. Somewhere, someone is rising. Somewhere, someone is choosing courage over despair, creation over destruction, restoration over ruin. And the question that burns quietly in the heart is whether that someone could be you. There comes a time when we must look beyond the ashes of what was lost and see the fire that still burns within us. Nations may stumble, leaders may fail, trust may shatter, but the story is never over as long as people still breathe with the courage to believe again. The collapse of bridges is not the end of the road. It is the challenge that dares us to build stronger ones. Do you see it? In the face of destruction, there is always the whisper of possibility. One life can betray, but another life can bless. One hand can divide, but another can heal. One voice can curse, but another can rise like thunder and speak hope into the silence. And if history has shown us anything, it is this: the future bends not to despair, but to those who refuse to surrender. So let the farmer who plants seeds in dry soil remind us that faith is not foolishness, but the audacity to believe that tomorrow will rain. Let the worker who lifts heavy burdens remind us that dignity is not in what we lose, but in what we carry with honor. Let the student with books too heavy for her shoulders remind us that the future belongs not to the destroyers, but to the dreamers who refuse to stop learning, to stop building, to stop reaching for what others said was impossible. This is the choice before us, the choice before you. Will you be the one who adds to the ruins, or the one who lays the first stone of rebuilding? Will you echo the voice of division, or will you dare to be the voice of unity? Will you wait for the crowd to change, or will you remember that history has always shifted when just one person decided it must? The power of one life is not a burden to fear, but a call to rise. And somewhere in the quiet of your own heart, you already know what must be done.